Imagine working for Dodge. Now imagine working for Dodge in the late 50s, where a small group of engineers at the Chrysler Engineering Institute who are obsessed with going fast were busy spending their free time finding ways to make cars go faster. Engineers that would in turn develop things like the now legendary 426 Hemi. They'd worked extensively with the Longhorn intake manifold found on cars like the Chrysler 300, and had started to experiment with intake tuning for drag racing. The name evolved to Ram's Horn, and eventually the public settled on Ram Induction. The engineers called themselves the Ram Chargers, and over the years went on to build some of the fastest, nastiest cars the world has ever seen. With two factory-sponsored drag cars, from 1962 to 1964, the team was undefeated. Dodge is no stranger to drag racing. But never in the history of cars had a manufacturer put into production a purpose-built, no-compromises, barely street-legal drag car. And it almost didn't happen. The Demon has to be the most unapologetic car to ever roll off any factory floor. And as if its stablemate the Hellcat wasn't brash enough, Dodge just gave us a new version. Enter the Demon 170. An alcohol-fueled 1,000-horsepower drag strip destroyer that's Dodge's way of sending off and celebrating the end of their V8-powered muscle cars. It's a car born from the death throes of the Chrysler LX platform, which, like your mother-in-law, has started to overstay its welcome. The LX and modified LC chassis underpins the Charger, Chrysler 300, and Challenger, and was essentially a tweaked version of what the W211 Mercedes E-Class rides on. Remember, when these cars were designed, Chrysler and Mercedes were having an affair. But Mercedes only used the platform until 2009 and has since completely reworked it twice, while Chrysler is still building cars on it to this day. It's been around 20 years. We've been through 5 generations of VW Golf in that time frame. But besides from the E-Class chassis, one of the greatest gifts Mercedes gave to Chrysler was the idea to launch SRT. BMW had M, Mercedes had AMG, and now Dodge had a group of madmen free to play with making the company's cars go fast. By the time Fiat had taken over the controlling stake in the company, SRT was firing on all cylinders, having built some of the rowdiest machines to ever terrorize the streets. With things like the SRT4s, SRT8s, SRT10s, the Jeep Trackhawk, the Ram TRX, and of course, the Hellcat. But with the changing landscape towards stricter emission standards, and the fact that the Viper was being phased out because they couldn't fit it with side curtain airbags, Dodge found themselves in an interesting position. The team at SRT knew they needed something to take the Viper's place as their Halo car. And they were never going to get approval to build anything from the ground up. It was Jeep and Ram that were making all the money under the Chrysler veil. So the team channeled their inner John and Horace, and with a little inspiration from the Ram Chargers, decided to build the nastiest car they could think of. Quicker to 60 than a Veyron, faster quarter-mile time than a 918 Spider, more V8 power than a McLaren P1. It has the largest hood scoop on any production car, and it ingests enough air to fill the lungs of 800 humans in a single quarter-mile sprint. It comes with cheater slicks, slightly grooved to make them DOT legal right from the factory. You have to sign a waiver to buy one that says you acknowledge it's not for rain, not for highway use. If yours was optioned without a passenger seat, you're not allowed to install one, nor shall you ever use track use features on a public road. Yeah, right. You sign an official document saying that you understand that this car will kill you, and that you can't sue Dodge if it does. But making a car that heavy go that fast took more than just a 2.7-liter supercharger with an intercooler that literally uses the air conditioning to drop intake temps. Engineers removed all the speakers except the ones in the doors, stripped out all noise and vibration dampers. The seats and steering column are manual adjustment only. The passenger and rear seats are deleted by default, but it's a $1 option to add them back in. They swapped the sway bars for some larger hollowed-out units and bolted on some ultra-lightweight wheels. It all added up to a car 200 pounds lighter than a Hellcat. It's got a built-in line lock system making warming up your rear tires easy, and a built-in trans brake, first time ever a factory option from any automaker. And then there's the crate. Another $1 option. Open up the Demon crate and you'll find a second ECM calibrated to run 100 octane fuel. and a different switch pack that gives you the 100-octane option. A jack, an impact wrench, a torque wrench, skinny front wheels, a fender cover, a tire pressure gauge, a tool bag, and a high-flow air filter. The crate fits perfectly in the trunk, and the idea is you can drive the car on the street tires to the track, and then spend a half hour or so swapping things over to make it a bona fide race car. And that all seems like kind of a lot to do just to take your car down the drag strip. But once the parts are fitted, you remembered to bring the red key and drag mode is engaged, the engine builds up torque reserve by optimizing ignition timing and supercharger airflow. The front suspension softens and the rear suspension stiffens up. Release the brakes and you're doing a wheelie. 0 to 60 comes in 2.3 seconds. 0 to 100 in just 5.1, and in just 9.65 seconds, your quarter-mile run is over. You just went too fast for the NHRA. And because you don't have an approved roll cage or driver training, you're banned. And that's the old Demon. But before we dive into the new one, how did the Demon name come about anyway? Dodge introduced the original Demon in 1971 as a twin to the Plymouth Duster, a fastback version of the Dodge Dart, and not specifically as a high-performance model. And it was almost called the Beaver, until some executives learned that that was country boy slang for a part of female anatomy. Funny enough, back then the Demon was available with a pair of slant 6s, a 318 V8, and a 340 V8, and most people chose the 6. It was renamed to Dart Sport in 1973 due to the overwhelming objection of the name from certain religious groups at the time. None of which is surprising coming from the company that allegedly had colors like Plum Crazy Purple and Sublime, initially titled Gangrene and Statutory Grape. Over its lifetime, they sold a staggering 130,000 of them, 20,000 of which had the 340. Then in 2007, the Demon name comes back for a 2-seat concept car that was aimed at the Mazda Miata and Pontiac Solstice. It was 350 pounds lighter than GM's Roadster and made 172 horsepower out of a 2.4-liter sent to the rear wheels. And it was going to ride on the Mercedes SLK platform just like the Chrysler Crossfire, but it was just a concept and unfortunately never went anywhere. And that brings us to 2018 with the launch of the first Challenger Demon. And this is the part where it almost didn't happen. FCA had been trying to disband and displace SRT since their takeover on April 1st, 2014. And it wasn't a joke. After some heated debates, they let them build one last moonshot car, the Demon. And that was supposed to be it. The final love letter to the muscle car and the petrol heads that love them. It was time to retire the Charger and Challenger in their current form, and certainly any outrageous fast and efficient versions of them. But then, the world spiraled out of control, what with the pandemic going on, and suddenly people were concerned with a lot more than replacing some old muscle car. The global pandemic had inadvertently bought the boys at Dodge a few more years. One last shot to close the chapter on their most iconic muscle cars with a bang. And with Dodge putting on their last call event and unveiling the most hardcore car the company has ever built, they did just that. The Demon 170. Runs on E85, pump gas, or a mix of anything in between. It's making 40% more boost than the Hellcat. And it does 0 to 60 in just 1.66 seconds, and the quarter mile in 8.91 at 151.7 miles an hour. It's the first 8-second production car in history, and rides on carbon fiber wheels wrapped in outrageous Mickey Thompson Street R drag radials. The supercharger alone displaces a full 3 liters. Like the last Demon, it has a trans brake, and was also immediately banned by the NHRA. It's got a completely reworked drivetrain, including the differential, driveshaft, and axles, and a completely new engine, where the only old component is the camshaft. New pistons, rods, crankshaft, the cylinder heads are studded right from the factory. It uses actual motorsports grade everything, including a fluid damper. It empties the fuel tank in just 5 minutes thanks to injectors that flow 164 gallons an hour. And there's no black key for this one. It's in full race mode, full time. It sucks so much air that 700 feet into a quarter-mile run, the Demon's engine would empty the air in the cabin, if that's where the air it was actually breathing came from. The thing has a parachute as a factory option. On May 31st, 2018, what was supposed to be the last Demon rolled off the line, and was sold at a Barrett-Jackson auction alongside the very last Viper. seems like a sad, sad ending for the team at SRT and the world of us enthusiasts. Until the Dodge brothers did what they did best and simply refused to stay knocked down. The Demon 170, just like the 2018 car, will be built in limited numbers. Just 3,300 to be exact, compared to the over 80,000 Hellcats roaming the streets today. And we'll never see cars like these built like it ever again. With Dodge committing to a fully electric future and rules and regulations continuing to hove into view for the combustion engine, this will be the last of the devilishly crazy, huge horsepower, fossil-burning machines to come from the madmen at Mopar. This really is the end. Thank you all for watching. Please remember to give this video a like and consider subscribing to Ideal for more stories just like these coming along every single week. Go watch whatever YouTube thinks is best for you right over on the side there, and we'll see you next time.